Alright, hello everyone. I am finally here. No, I'm 3 minutes late, sorry about that. Lots of preparation for all this. Let me go to my YouTube to see what everybody is commenting. Water's finished boiling. My channel. This thing. Watch the ads. Alright, so we have RMS Queen Mary's here. Tyler is here. Hello. Jedi Mar is here. Strasbourg Rail Fanner is here. Hello, Ken. I'm doing great. Having a good weekend. Alright, and Thomas is here. Hello. Gaming with Ken is here. Harrison is here. Good evening, everybody. So, let me just pour out some of this tap water here. Let me see. It is quite a cold day today. Alright. Now I can pour some of this boiling water. Alright. Let that preheat just a little bit. Oh. Hey Mike, how's it going? KR is here, hello. So yeah, after this live stream I have a little meeting to do with a friend of mine. So my friend Steve is gonna call me. Not the Steve that's usually on a lot of my videos, it's the Steve from QMI. And then another QMI board member, Robin, we'll be talking to him too. So we're working on that project I was talking about. How they were part of the project for the what's it called? The Yarrow Project, where in the early 2000s they were working to see if they could recreate 2 of the Queen Mary's boiler rooms and design like a little science center for people to enjoy and have fun and get hands-on interaction with the exhibits and things. Really cool little idea. Never came to fruition because the company that they worked for, RMS Foundation, had went bankrupt just before they were able to get approvals for the project. Yeah. So there is some video content that, you know, it never went anywhere. You know, they got actor Ernest Borgnine to narrate some of their projects, and they never were able to use his narration because they never completed the videos. So at least not completed publicly. So, you know, I've been asked to be part of this thing and to see if I could finish those projects and get those out to you guys, so everybody can see what the Yarrow Project was, what it can still be, and so of course you can enjoy Ernest's wonderful narration of the project. I still want more water in there. Alright, because that'll absorb some of the tea. Ooh, alright, well, oh well. There's a sweet spot that I apparently missed here, so there's a bit too much water in there. But if I don't put enough, then I don't get my 2 teacups worth. You know what, I gotta pour out some of that. There we go. Alright. Move the teacup over here. So yeah, so nobody's heard this narration, at all. It just the people involved in the project have heard it. And, again, done by actor Ernest Borgnine, and so, I was like, well, I can finish these videos for you guys and put them out to the public so people can finally see them and appreciate them. And they're really fascinating, honestly. They're really fascinating. So today we're going to have a meeting after this and talk about the plan. We're first working on a teaser trailer. So the idea is, like all teaser trailers, we complete it and then we put it out so you guys can see it first. So, yeah, I'm really excited. There's some amazing stuff going on with that. Alright, let's see what people are messaging me. First, 413. Alright, so ScanFan Ed says, hello Alex, hope everyone hits the like button. Let's support Alex. There is so much garbage out there. It's nice to see something wholesome and educational such as this. Thanks, Alex. You're welcome, ScanFan Ed. It's funny, someone commented on my video today. So, the video I put out about whether the Queen Mary is top-heavy without her boilers, someone immediately put on a comment on that and said, of course she's top-heavy without her boilers. This is clickbait. And that was it. And I'm like, did you actually watch the video? Some people are just wired differently. The first thing they see insults them. And then they just immediately go to the comment section and just write out their anger. And it's just weird that people are like that. But Strasbourg says, looks like the Tim Tams are back. They're yummy. I see you got Earl Grey. No, I don't have the Tim Tams. Tim Tams are too expensive. So these are the McVitie's digestives. They're chocolate covered. So I always have these with my tea. But except for when I had the Tim Tams, I replaced them with the Tim Tams. But still, yeah, these are the McVitie's digestives. Let's see. But yes, I do have the Earl Grey here. If I adjust it like that, will it reflect? Oh, that's even better. Okay. 2 minutes on the tea now. Mike says, have a question for you. Not ship-related, but Disney. Where on Main Street is there an employee-only sign instead of cast members only? I heard there's only one place. I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't think I've ever personally seen an employees-only sign. Crittenden says this has been... Oh, why? I don't know what that means. I hope that it's something good. RMS Queen Mary says, there is a steam train in my city. It's well preserved. Nice. I feel like my chair is blocking the view of this thing. But if I, move any closer to this thing, I'm just getting in the way of the drapes, and it just bothers me, because every time I move, the drapes get moved. Is my lights too bright? I don't know. Something feels off about the lighting today. Everything's the same, I think. Harrison says, can you make videos on the SS United States? I don't know about that. The SS United States is not a ship I like very much. I don't think I would enjoy making videos about it. Let's see here. So, tea time. Crittenden says, this has been on my mind for a while now. If the city were to move Queen Mary to a dry dock, is there a potential for her to capsize? It's highly unlikely, but there is always a potential. something can always go wrong with any ship when you try to move it, But, with the Queen Mary, I suppose one of the potential things that could go wrong is if, it was really a windy day or something and they had some trouble moving her, because tugboats are really good at moving ships, but sometimes on a strong day, the winds can really catch a large ship using it like a sail, and next thing you know, you lose control of the ship. So I suppose the biggest concern would be if it was a windy day or something, or a huge gust came, it could make complications where they can't control the ship's movement. So that might be the one thing that comes to mind, but nothing else really comes to mind in terms of issues for moving the ship. The thing is that they can't move the ship too far. So if you're asking if they move it, to a dry dock nearby, shouldn't be an issue, because if they're planning to build one just less than a couple miles away. They haven't officially announced it yet, but they are currently investigating how they can go about it. And as long as it was inside the Long Beach harbor, the Queen Mary should be fine. If they had to leave the harbor and leave the breakwater of the harbor, the Queen Mary would be subjected to, whatever weather's out there and choppy seas if there are any. So that would be the potential issue there. The Queen Mary, she can take a little bit of rolling, but she is quite old, and I do wonder, what it would be like if she had to endure the full force of the sea again. So, yes, today is Earl Grey. Did I put that? Yeah, that's fine. I'll move this. And sugar. Let me see. Ken says, "Hey Alex, I'm finishing my vintage Spruce Goose model kit as we speak. I notice it's stamped Rather Corporation under the wing. Pretty interesting." That must have been, those models kits must have been commissioned while the Jack Rather Corporation was operating the Spruce Goose. That's the first thing that comes to my mind. Because for those that don't know, the Rather Corporation during the 80s had control of the Queen Mary and the Spruce Goose in Long Beach, and so they branded everything with the Jack Rather Corporation logo. Alrighty. The tea is prepared. Thomas says, although they are less effective than other engines, I love looking at reciprocating engines running. Oh, I do too. Yeah, it's almost a shame that reciprocating engines started to decline in their use, because they really are amazing things to look at, But it almost seems that all the best engines we can design in this world are all, housed in something where we can't see it. So, whether it comes to internal combustion engines or reciprocating steam engines, it's really a shame that we don't get to see that kind of movement anymore. I think that's what makes trains and old ocean liners so interesting is the machinery. RMS says, does anyone know why the MV Wilhelm Gustloff midship is broken in her wreck? Oh, I certainly don't know, but maybe somebody here knows. Strasbourg says, I keep staring at those cucumber sandwiches because they are so good. Also, I shared this stream with someone. Awesome, thank you. Well, today is egg sandwiches, actually. Made similarly. They're made with butter and mayonnaise, and then I put fresh chopped dill in there as well. A little bit of garlic powder, a little bit of salt for flavor, but yeah, I've it's weird. When I order the cucumbers and the dill, sometimes they come here already rotten, and I have to report it, and then I have to wait till the next time I get my grocery order. So that's what's been happening is I haven't been getting fresh cucumbers lately. So I've been having to switch to these egg sandwiches, which I prefer the cucumber sandwiches. Evan Scott says, oh, well, first of all, hello, Luke Michael. Evan Scott says, when they dry dock the Queen Mary, will they put it back in its place? Oh, yeah. I don't see the Queen Mary ever moving permanently from where she is right now. At least, yeah, let's not go there, but at least not for now. But yeah, the reason why is because she's actually in a really good spot. I mean, people like to say, oh, she's in a terrible spot, there's nothing over there, but the beauty of that spot is if you develop it, you can make something way better than what's on the other side of the harbor. The only problem is no one's really developed it, That's the problem. But there is huge revenue potential for the land that she's parked next to. Huge revenue potential. And just has never happened yet. Not because it can't. It's just because the operators who've always operated the Queen Mary, they just never really know what to do. They come in there with all these hopes, but then they realize like their ideas haven't been so good after all. I'd say one of the best operators of the Queen Mary. Well, first was Jack Rather Corporation. They didn't necessarily elevate the Queen Mary to new levels in terms of business, but they did keep her well maintained. I'd say the next best operator was probably RMS Foundation. I think because they actually tried to restore certain areas of the ship. As sometimes it came out pretty poorly, sometimes it came out pretty good, but at least they tried. But other operators, I can't at the moment think of any other operators that really restored the ship. They just kind of kept it as is and tried to make money off of it without improving it. So Anchor Hardware Athlon says hello. Mysterious Wanderer says, how do you feel about the Antonov AN-225 being destroyed? I'm not really an aircraft enthusiast. The only one I like is the Spruce Goose, and that's just because of its history, not really because of the aircraft itself. But it is sad when, any piece of machinery is destroyed for no reason, so it is pretty sad in that sense. Brent says, I sure do miss the Queen Mary Sunday brunch. It truly was an amazing experience. Yeah, I would have really loved to do that. They stopped doing it before I went to visit the Queen Mary. My friend was like, oh yeah, Urban Commons stopped doing it. For what reason, I don't know. It was still popular when they quit it. Urban Commons did a lot of weird things. I mean, I know they're in court right now for, well, but before they did all that stuff, it was weird that they made such strange business decisions. They're like, oh, no more room service. Okay. And let's cut back on how many restaurants are open at the same time. Okay. And let's cut back on the amount of entertainment and offerings there are to the guests. And then let's raise all the prices by double. It was just like, who would do that? Like, that's just, that right there is asking for your business to fail. Let's see. Anchor Hardware says, do you think Cunard will make more ocean liners? I think that it's possible they might make another one after the Queen Mary 2 is designated for eventual retiring. I think it'll be a lot like what happened to the QE2, where it would be a very indecisive decision until the last minute, and then they'll probably make one, and it will go in service right when the Queen Mary 2 is going to retire or something. And who knows? I'm hoping the Queen Mary 2 remains in service, for another 20 some odd years. Hopefully they keep it for the full 40 years of service that ships usually are designed for. Yeah. But as for a fleet of ocean liners, I don't see anything like that happening unless there was some kind of major cultural shift, and for some reason ocean liners became a popular thing. I don't see why they would. Cruise ships are becoming more popular. Ocean liners, there's no reason. The only thing I can see is... The only thing I can see in terms of ocean liners coming back is what's happening with the airline industry. Airline industry is practically sabotaging their own business by making the experience more uncomfortable, by making the experience more expensive, and then of course there's the airports that you have to deal with, the overcrowded airports. Like, I often tell people, I avoid flying at all costs, and I avoid it as if I'm afraid of flying. I'm not actually afraid of flying. I just hate the experience so much. I hate going into airports and waiting in those long lines. I hate, being stuffed in to a tiny little airplane that is really, really hot, and they say, oh, the air conditioning's on, but I don't feel it, and I hate the whole experience, and someone sitting right behind me for several hours, and kids kicking my seat, or babies crying. I mean, I have nothing against babies, but I mean, come on. Nobody wants to hear a baby cry. So it's a god-awful experience. And so the only thing I can see is people getting real tired of it and going, you know what, let's take an ocean liner, across the sea at least. That's why some people take the Queen Mary too. It's not always because people are like, oh, let me just have a leisurely time. Some people, like me, take the Queen Mary too because they just hate flying. So I wonder if as airports get busier and busier and busier, and more airlines take to the air, and air traffic can start to slow down because of, the lack of enough runways and stuff to handle the load, I can't help but wonder if maybe that's what will bring a few ocean liners back. Maybe not to the degree it was in the early 1900s. Let's face it, that's probably never coming back. But I can't help but wonder if maybe ocean liners will come back for that reason. That if you're a business person and you're not in any particular hurry, you can get on an ocean liner. And we know, the SS United States was the fastest ocean liner ever built. It had, it could transport you at 38, 39 knots without any issue. So I think ocean liners today, if we were to design one even better, it could easily go over 40 knots. And you can, your trip could be, 3 days max, across the ocean. I think that would be interesting. I'd like to see a world where that happened. Of course, they wouldn't be made of, they wouldn't be made to burn coal or oil like they used to, but, they probably wouldn't even look anything like they used to, but they would be ocean liners. Okay. L. Rivera says, do you think Titanic 2 will ever sail? No. That guy has been talking about Titanic 2 since I was a kid. It's not coming. Never. Ever, ever. Simplest reason is because there's no market for it. The experience would be catered only for the super rich. And the reason why is because compared to modern cruise ships, the Titanic is a small ship with not enough rooms for its size. you know, to make that money back, you need more rooms compared to the ratio of size to your ocean liner. And so, so Titanic 2 just doesn't have that. Therefore, for them to make a profit, only the super rich can take it. But the super rich, they're not looking for Titanic. So you need to find super rich people who are into Titanic. And if they're into Titanic, you need to find the ones who are not afraid to once again challenge God by building a Titanic 2. So I think right there it just slims down, you know, your demographic to this tiny amount. It would never be profitable. And I think that, what's his name, the guy who dreamed it up, I think he knows it won't be profitable, but he wants to do it anyway because, you know, he's a Titanic fan. But I heard a couple weeks ago, it was canceled. It was canceled last year. Because after all these years, he realized that it's just not happening. And he's getting older, you know, so there was an April Fool's joke put on Facebook 2 days ago where they said, oh, he's, you know, they've started laying the keel of Titanic 2, and it wasn't real though. It was a April Fool's joke. So, all right, let's see. Oh, Tyler, was there a Latter-day Saint on board? That makes sense. There's people from all walks of life there. RMS Queen Mary says, if you got a chance to name a ship, what would you name it? I don't know. I'm terrible at making names for stuff. I honestly wouldn't be able to think of one. Ronald Eaton says, hello, Alex. Greetings from the park. Oh, I see. Somebody's at Disneyland. Anchor says, if you could bring back one scrapped ocean liner, what would it be? Mauretania. Yeah, that would be it. Mysterious Wanderer says, do you know a Freedom Ship? Yeah, that was another idea when I was a little kid. A little kid. They were announcing it. There was a documentary on TV all about it, and I knew even as a child, I was like, that's never going to happen. I didn't know why back then, but it just, you know, intuition told me that's not going to happen. And now as an adult, I'm like, yeah, that would never work. You know, believe it or not, there is a limit to how big you can build a ship. People don't really think about it, you know, because we've never, like, actually officially said, oh, there's limits to how big we can build stuff. But there are. There are limits as to how tall you can build a building. There's limits as to how big you can build, you know, a ship. And I don't mean, you know, buildings that are so tall they reach space. That's not what I mean. And I don't mean ocean liners that are so big that they're practically the same size as the ocean. I just mean that there is a limit to how big you can build a ship before you start to realize it's just impossible. I don't know what it is. If I remember correctly reading an article once, it was estimated that probably the largest ship that could ever be built was something like 3/4 of a mile, or, you know, half a mile, but not even a full half mile. It would have to be less. And that Freedom Ship was supposed to be a whole mile long. But, like, the reason why is because when you get to stuff that's that big, you can't build it solid enough that it holds together in rough weather. So, you know, skyscrapers, they move in the wind. You probably don't notice it much, but they do kind of do this S-curve. And the bigger and bigger you build them, the more they sway and stuff. And, you know, if something happens, they could snap and fall. And that's just how, you know, that's just how it is. That's how physics are. Same thing with ships. You know, you can build them big and strong, but there is there is an extent where it's so big and so heavy you can't control how well it stays together, and it would just, there's a limit. So a lot of people don't know that. Let me see here. Oh, her name was Irene Corbett. Okay. Gaming with Kin says, I am mad. Why are you mad, Gaming with Kin? What happened? So, yeah. Now, it's funny, I was talking to some people about my Titanic versus Queen Mary video. And the funny thing is that a lot of people think that that video was meant to pit the ships against each other. Like, which one's better? And that's not what the video was about. In fact, I even think in the beginning of the video, I literally said that the video was meant to show people what has changed over the years. And so it's funny because one of the number one things I get is people are always like, oh, this is an unfair comparison. You should really be comparing Titanic to Mauretania, a ship of its own time. And I'm like, that's not what the video is about. It's about how things changed. What happened in those 20 years that made Queen Mary so different. Because the whole point of the video is that, I don't know if you guys noticed, but the Queen Mary is compared to Titanic a lot. A lot. And even in movies, the Queen Mary is used to represent Titanic. A few times she's been in movies where she's represented Titanic. And there's a movie that will be coming out in the next year or two or something like that, and it's supposed to be Titanic, but they're using the Queen Mary as a set. And so I felt like people need to know that there's a huge difference. When you think about it outside the ocean liner community, most people who look at Queen Mary, they go, oh, it's like some sister ship to Titanic, because it obviously looks like Titanic. But, obviously, if you're an ocean liner fan, you know the difference between Queen Mary and Titanic. So I thought that was really interesting, John says, do you think it would be a good idea for the Queen to partner with the USS Iowa Museum? I think in terms of restoration work, yes. The people who have restored the USS Iowa have done an amazing job. So I think that if they were to partner with them in such a way that they could come over and do work on the Queen Mary, that'd be good. But I don't think something as large as the Queen Mary should be managed by, a small foundation or even one foundation. It's too much of a big task, Luke says, what's your favorite Carnival ship? I don't have one. I don't like cruise ships. Cunard, if you were to ask me what my favorite Cunard ship, probably be the Queen Mary 2. If you're asking me any Cunard ship, I'd say the Queen Mary. But Carnival ship, I don't have one. Anchor says, the latest Cunard ship, Queen Anne, do you think of it as a cruise ship or a liner? Oh, it is very much a cruise ship. The Queen Anne is very, very much a cruise ship. I don't like its style, in case you're wondering. It's not mine. Not my style. I'll just say that. But I understand why they're changing it. They have 3 ships that on the inside look so much alike. Same basic idea when it comes to the style. Edwardian / Art Deco. So they wanted something that represented something more futuristic, more sleek. So they got inspiration from the QE2 when they built Queen Anne. So I get it. I just don't like the style. Okay. Sorry, I was reading your comment, Tyler. Gaming with Kid says, so yesterday my Amazon account got hacked. The hackers order a lot of nasty stuff. Well, I hope you reported it to your bank. Because they can, stop those charges. Greg Morris says, can you talk about how they would move the walls in the hallways of the Queen Mary to increase or decrease the amount of people in classes of service? Yes. Wow, finally. A question where I feel like I haven't already covered it yet. So if you guys know anything about Titanic, you may have seen in James Cameron's movie that there's these big iron gates, right? And everybody knows those gates were not purposely shut to keep the third class downstairs during the sinking. They were usually shut just to prevent third class passengers from going into second or first class areas. And a lot of ships had that. They had either little waist high gates or sometimes big iron gates that close. Well, the Queen Mary, she did something interesting. So a lot of other ships, they separated the classes by putting third class at the bottom, second class in the middle, and no, I'm sorry, I have it all wrong. They separated the classes by putting third class usually in the front of the ship, the first class in the middle, and second class in the aft end of the ship. And then with Titanic, there was a little bit of both. They had third class had a little bit of the front, a little bit of the rear, and then they had a way to get back and forth. But anyway, point is, Queen Mary did it differently. She stacked them. So third class was at the bottom of the ship, second in the middle, and first class at the top of the ship. And they did it that way because if they needed more rooms or less rooms for a certain class, they could actually expand into those areas. So if you go to like B deck on the Queen Mary, and I wish I had a picture to show you right now, but I can't pull anything up because this is a live stream. But if you look at B deck on the Queen Mary, and you go forward on the ship, not aft, but forward, what you will see is that the fancy wooden walls kind of give way to less fancy walls, kind of bare looking. And that's especially over by B340, you'll definitely notice that. And the reason why is because where B340 is used to be cabins that could be used as third class rooms. And so if you look in the hallways, even in the second class area of the hallways, you'll also notice that there are these little holes in the walls, little brass notches. They're made of brass, little brass notches in the walls. And that was so that way they could take this big, fancy-looking wooden gate. It was nicely polished and varnished and everything. And it was a big, fancy wooden gate, giant, went practically from floor to ceiling. And they could actually move that gate further down the hall or back towards the end of the hall. So if they had a lot of third-class passengers on a particular voyage and they didn't have enough third-class staterooms for them, they could take the passengers that paid the most and put them higher up on the ship towards where second or third class was, and then they would move those gates further into the first class areas in order to allow those people to use those cabins. And that's why you'll also notice that the finest crafted rooms in the first class staterooms are towards the middle of the ship. That's partly because the middle of the ship was the most stable during a storm, so you didn't feel it as badly during a storm. But the other reason, so I mean, what I'm trying to say is because it was more stable during a storm, it costed more money because they were nicer cabins. But the other reason why they were nicer towards the center of the ship is because if you were filling the other cabins towards the front or the rear of the ship with second and third class, then, you know, it would be kind of weird to spend all that money and make a fancy cabin only for it to be used a lot by third class. You know what I'm saying? So that's why they did that. But yeah, they have these fancy gates, and they would just hang them up, and they had these little brass pegs that fit into the notches on the walls, and they could adjust that down the hallway for maybe less than 100 feet or something like that down the hallway. And they could do that on B deck and A deck. I believe main deck was just permanently first class, but I believe A deck and B deck had those notches in the hallways, so they could do that. Pretty interesting. So room B340 used to be like a series of maybe 4 or 5 third class rooms that were relatively nicely appointed, and they could be used as lower end first class rooms for people who didn't pay for the best experience. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, for lack of better words. But yeah, that's essentially what they're for. So pretty neat. Let's see. Anchor says that's why it's called RMS Clickbait, not Titanic. Yeah, that's true. Adventure of the Stone says, "Hi Alex, looking classy. Thank you so much." Mysterious Wanderer says, "Why are ships like the USS Midway or USS Iowa more successful than Queen Mary?" Well, it's quite simple. Those aren't hotels. You know, you're not going there to be entertained. You're going there because there's something very serious you're trying to learn about. And yeah, they can make the experience fun, but I wouldn't necessarily count that as family entertainment. I count that more as just a good museum, you know. So USS Iowa, USS Midway, they're warship museums, but the Queen Mary is not. You know, I don't know if you know, but she's a hotel and a tourist attraction. She has museum aspects to her, but you'll notice when you go throughout the ship, there's no full-fledged museum in there. Like, if you walk around, like, there's no place where you'll actually go through a maze of exhibits. If they have that, it's usually a traveling exhibit, and it's not there permanently. So the Queen Mary isn't a full-on museum. She's really just more of a hotel on the water that is historic. And so because of that, you get a different kind of visitor. You get family tourism as opposed to like ship fanatics. Of course, you do get ship fanatics, but my point is that it's more towards family tourism. And so the reason why the Queen Mary hasn't been very successful is because the people who've run her have never experienced something like that before. You know, when you think of tourism, you think, okay, it's either a hotel or it's a theme park or it's a museum, right? You don't think of it as like it's a combination. Because a combination is where you start to get to, well, how do we do this, you know? So certain operators like Jack Rather operated the Queen Mary like a hotel. Operators like Disney operated the Queen Mary as if it was, you know, a tourist attraction and convention center, you know. And then you had Urban Commons who treated the Queen Mary, well, horribly, but they treated her like she was some kind of motel. And so they always choose one or the other. They always go, we'll go towards the entertainment, and the other company will be like, we'll go towards the hotel aspect. But they never combine the three ideas. That's exactly what she is. She's three ideas in one. She's a museum, she's a hotel, and she's a tourist attraction. So you have to satisfy the need for all three of those things in order for it to work. And that's what makes the Queen Mary so complex. Not impossible to to make successful, but complex. And unless you're an experienced, tourist attraction operator, then you might not know what to do with it. So, RMS Foundation, they tried to restore certain areas of the ship, but one major thing that they forgot was, in their effort to restore, they forgot to entertain. And so, they had the hotel aspect down pretty well. They had contracted, workers that did the hotel operations. So they had that down, and then they were doing the restoration like a museum should do. But they forgot the entertainment. They forgot they're not just operating a museum and a hotel, they're operating a tourist attraction too. So they have to entertain and excite. And they were starting to realize that towards the end. They were just starting to get the hang of it. They were working on the Yarrow Project. The Yarrow Project would have been a major tourist attraction in the ship. And they realized it too late. And they went out of business. So that's why ships like USS Iowa and Midway are successful, whereas Queen Mary isn't. They're just different business ideas. So, Strasburg asks, what kind of tea tonight? Tonight it is Earl Grey. I don't know if you guys noticed either. In the description of the video, now I have instructions for how to take care of china. So if you ever have like a, tea service like this, and it's real china, there's instructions in the description of my videos now that tell you how to take care of it. Let's see. The professor's here. He says, I hope that Cunard will build another ocean liner after Queen Mary too. Yeah, me too. I hope they do. Luke says, is there a reason Cunard doesn't make another ocean liner? Yeah, because ocean liners cost more to build. They use more materials and more expensive materials because they're built stronger and more robust than other ships. Another reason is that if they build one the size of QE2 or even the size of Queen Mary 2, they can have a really deep draft in the water, which limits what kind of ports they can go to. Cruise ships, they get around that by building really shallow drafts that allow them into most ports. The Queen Mary 2, they had to really work hard. The Queen Mary 2 has a draft of 34 feet. For comparison, the Oasis of the Seas, one of the largest ships ever, the Oasis of the Seas has a draft of only 31 feet. So it can go in shallower waters than the Queen Mary 2 can. And the Queen Mary 2 is not as big in terms of size, but the other thing too is that ocean liners are not as profitable as cruise ships because they can't be built to the same dimensions. Ocean liners have to be narrower, so that way they can slice through waves like a knife. And so cruise ships, they can build really wide. Again, another example is Oasis of the Seas, and other Oasis-class ships. They're really wide ships. But ocean liners can't be built that wide unless they're built much longer. So that way they can cut through those waves. Ocean liners also waste a lot of space. So you'll notice that with ocean liners, even the QM2, Queen Mary 2, you'll notice that its bow is longer than other cruise ships, and its stern is more stepped back than other cruise ships. That, to a cruise line, is a waste of space, because that's areas you could have built taller. But for ocean liners, they have to be built back. So that way, if waves come crashing over the bow or the stern, they'll lose their momentum as they crash over the ship. And the ship will actually survive that better. It helps prevent waves that do go over the bow or the stern from actually flooding over the decks of the ship. So there's a lot of reasons, but mainly, it's because ocean liners just have to be built to certain dimensions compared to their size, and that usually means less rooms for the size of the ship. One of the biggest hurdles they had to overcome for Queen Mary 2 was balconies, because most people who go on cruise ships now expect balconies. There's rooms that don't have balconies, but most people who go on cruise ships expect balconies nowadays. That's why the Oasis class ships, now they have this big alley in the middle of them to double the amount of balconies they have. So that way more passengers get balconies. So they knew that even back when the Queen Mary 2 was being designed, they knew that people wanted balconies. You know, that was one of the biggest things about the QE2. One of the biggest complaints was it just didn't have enough balcony rooms. And people knew, obviously, it's because it's an older ship, but yeah, so that's one of the hurdles they had to overcome. They said, how do we build balconies on a ship that's designed to, you know, withstand this hellish weather? You know, balconies are an issue for an ocean liner, because if a huge rogue wave comes and hits, those giant windows for your balcony sliding doors pose a major threat. So their solution was only to build the balconies super high up, and then for the lower ones, that I wouldn't necessarily call them balconies, they have like little porches, but the ones that have the little porches out front, those are surrounded in a heavy steel outer hull casing to help reduce the impact of a major wave. But they still have problems. You know, Queen Mary 2, one of its biggest problems during storms is that water comes into its windows and sliding doors a lot easier, simply because, again, the weather is so strong. Large windows are not a good idea for ocean liners. So they really had to overcome a lot of hurdles for the Queen Mary 2. So that's why they're not in a hurry to build more ocean liners. Queen Mary 2 is highly successful, but that means they have to charge more money per room to make back that kind of money. Let's see. Mr. Olive says, what is the latest ocean liner by Cunard? It is the Queen Mary 2. Yeah, Crittenden is right. The Queen Mary 2 is the only ocean liner in service, in sea service, I should say. But the Queen Anne is a cruise ship. So, very big difference. Cruise ships are not ocean liners, and ocean liners are not cruise ships. So, for other people wondering. Anaro says, I'm going on the vintage crossing on Queen Mary 2 in a couple weeks. I'm trying to temper my expectations after visiting the original ship. Oh yeah, you're doing the one with the jazz band, right? The famous jazz band where they're dressed like in the 30s and they do 30s music and stuff. Yeah, I've heard of that one. That sounds like fun. Yeah, the original Queen Mary, it's hard to beat, but I think, from what I've seen of Queen Mary 2, I'm excited to go. I want to eventually go on a transatlantic crossing on the Queen Mary 2. I think it's the closest you can get to a traditional crossing. Glenn says, I just served a table of 17 for afternoon tea today. Upon clearing, the waiting staff laughed when they dropped and smashed a 120-year-old side plate. Oh my god. Well, I mean, what else are they going to do, I guess? I mean, you can't just sit there and cry in front of the guests. You can't just be like, oh no, I smashed a 120-year-old plate. You know, you have to just kind of laugh it off and then, you know, then get written up by your manager. Let's see. Let's see. Glenn says, thank you for your tips for the china. As I said last week, you saved my china, unlike my staff. Let's see. What is the difference between a 1910 ocean liner and an 1890 cruise ship? The first cruise ship was built in 1900, so there is no 1890 cruise ship. Fox Starline is here. Hello, Fox Starline. Joanne says, "Hi, Alex. Would you think that if built, the White Star Line's Oceanic would have compared to the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth? Oh, the really big one they were planning to build? I think it would have. You know, I know I'm a huge Cunard fan, but I do think that White Star Line, they always really worked hard to build beautiful ships. I personally don't think the outside of their new Oceanic looked very good at all. I don't like the short funnels, and I don't like the way it looked. But I do think that the inside would have been very beautiful. So yeah, I do think it would have compared. And there is a possibility that if it had been built, it probably would have pulled them out of their financial woes, you know, honestly. But if I'm going to admit something, I am kind of glad they didn't build it, because that probably would have meant Queen Mary couldn't have been built, and Queen Mary is my favorite ship. So there is a part of me that's kind of thankful they never built that Oceanic. Mr. Olive says the first cruise ship was built in 1891. What ship was it? Emma says, "Hey, do you know anything about the MS Stockholm and now the MV Astoria?" I've heard their names, but I don't know anything about them. But I have heard those names before. Anchor says, "Do you see more ocean liner companies coming out from all the talk... companies coming out from all the talk about Queen Mary 2? Oh, do I see ocean liner companies starting to build ocean liners again after seeing the success of Queen Mary 2? No. Like I said, cruise ships are way more profitable than any ocean liner can be. You know, if you build a really massive ocean liner... I mean, even when they built the Queen Mary 2, she was the largest passenger ship ever built in history. The Queen Mary 2, you know, they built her super big so that way, you know, she can make a lot of money. But as big as you can build an ocean liner, you can always build a cruise ship much larger, and it will be more financially profitable than any ocean liner. So other companies, I don't see them building ocean liners only because even the Queen Mary 2, the only reason why she's an ocean liner is to do those transatlantic crossings. And those transatlantic crossings are not that popular. They're popular enough to book out the Queen Mary 2, but they're not popular enough that Cunard is like, hey, let's build a second one, you know. They're just not that popular. So like I said earlier in the live stream, I think that the only reason why ocean liners could possibly come back is if the airline industry is way too much of a hassle for most people, and, you know, and the experience just continues to degrade, then possibly someday someone will have the idea to build a really fast ocean liner that goes over 40 knots on its daily services to compete with airplanes, you know. So, yeah, that's the only way I can see that happening. Matthew Mahoney says the QE2 is successful as a hotel. Yes, she is. She is very successful. Those owners are so happy to have the QE2. Let me finish this one. Time for more tea. I like having a lot of stuff to talk about during these tea times, you know. So today's been a really good day on that front because we can talk about all these different topics and stuff. Let me just... let's see. That's right, yeah, Mr. Olive says the Princess and Victoria Louise. I thought... okay, let me... You know what? I feel like in a previous live stream we talked about when that was built, and I don't remember it being 1890. Just a second. Because I feel like we literally talked about it last live stream. Let me see. It was launched in 1900. It wasn't 1890. It was the Prinzessin Victoria Louise was launched in 1900, June of 1900. Yeah. I knew it was 1900. Mike Ryan says, hey, Alex, just got home, but have to go right out again for food. That's okay. Luke says, what's your favorite White Starline ship? My favorite White Starline ship would probably be the Oceanic from 1899. That one is a beautiful ship. Not very large, but very beautiful. Well, not large by you know, Titanic or Queen Mary standards, I mean, but, you know. But yeah, beautiful ship for 1899. That is my favorite White Starline ship. Yeah. So... Tangent says, do you like Star Trek? I like some Star Trek, but that's not the topic of my channel, so I'd like to stick to the stuff on my channel that we discuss. Oh, speaking of stuff on my channel, I have a video coming out tomorrow about my love for narrow gauge steam trains. So keep an eye out for that video tomorrow. I think it's pretty interesting. I included a lot of images and video in there, and some interesting stuff about narrow gauge trains and what makes them different and why I like them. So there's lots of cool stuff in there. I think you'll like that one. And then I'm hoping for Friday I'll have my video about the Benson Hotel out. I was going to release the Benson Hotel video on Tuesday, but after really doing my research, I figured out most people who watch my channel watch on weekends, and so my most successful videos are published on Fridays. So the Benson Hotel video, which is a full-on documentary, will be published on Friday. But until then, tomorrow, Monday, is my video about the narrow gauge trains. Tuesday is my next tea time live stream, and I'm thinking Wednesday I want to do a live stream where I show you guys some areas of the Queen Mary that used to be something but are now something else. I think that'll be really interesting. I just have to be sure that I'm careful how I do it, because the images I'm going to use aren't owned by me, so I don't want to do anything that puts anybody in trouble, so I'll have to think about how I'm going to go about it. But yeah, I'm thinking Wednesday will be a really cool live stream where I get to show you guys places of the Queen Mary that that no longer exist as they once were, and they are secret images, so stuff that you've probably never seen before unless you've worked on the ship or seen images of these areas. So I have some cool stuff about that, and eventually in the works, I haven't recorded it yet, but eventually in the works, I'm going to make a video about what is really wrong with the Queen Mary's swimming pool. Because there's this huge thing, like one of the first things I ever heard about Queen Mary was that its swimming pool room is collapsing. It's structurally unstable, and they can't let anybody in. And I found out that's not the full story, that's not true. There is a very simple answer as to why it's not open. So, so after tons of like research and stuff, I'm trying to figure out how to make a video about that. So, but I do have that in the works, so that'll be going on. So after the Benson Hotel this Friday, I think next Friday will be the Spruce Goose, and then the Friday after will be either the Johann von Oldenbarnevelt or I might finally re-release my Rolling Mary video. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I put out a video, the Rolling Mary, like a year ago. And it was a very problematic video because it was not very well written. So people thought like I was putting down the Queen Mary in the video, saying she's an unstable, dangerous ship. And then, of course, I missed out on a very major thing, which was explaining why the Queen Mary rolled so badly in that video. So I've been rewriting the script for that video, making it more clear and concise, and explaining the mechanics behind the Queen Mary's rolling, and then of course the narration will be better because I have a better microphone now. So that one is going to be in the works as well eventually. So let's see. Oh, Crittenden is going to sleep. Good night, Crittenden. Was RMMV Oceanic 3 longer than Queen Mary and Normandy? I don't remember. Professor says, my favorite ocean liner was the RMS Britannic, but sadly she never sailed as an ocean liner. Yeah, that's true. Yep. Mr. Olive says, most Titanic pictures I have seen, it shows the watertight bulkheads go up halfway. So if one compartment was flooded, would it flow over into the next compartment? Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what happened. That's the whole reason why Titanic sank, was because when the watertight compartments at the bow of the ship became flooded, their weight pulled the ship further under, which only caused the water to just spill over to the next compartment. So that happened over and over again. They didn't want the same thing to happen with the Queen Mary. So with the Queen Mary, she was built with, I gotta put air quotes, but capped compartments. I say capped because they were designed with watertight steel on the top of the compartments, so that way water couldn't overflow to the next compartment. And the only openings were to allow air ventilation from the top of the ship in and exhaust up and out the stacks, the funnels. So, but it would have been very hard for any water from the top decks to come all the way down and flood the compartment. So technically they were capped because it wouldn't have been possible for the water to spill over the next bulkhead. On Titanic, it wasn't built like that. There was no caps to the compartments. So Luke says, what made the SS United States so fast? She had really powerful engines, a really streamlined hull, and yeah, just a whole lot of horsepower. And it also helped that she was smaller than the Queen Mary by like a lot. I almost feel like the whole thing about the SS United States wasn't really a fair comparison, because they're like, oh, it's the fastest ocean liner in the world. It's like, yeah, but it's also very much smaller than Queen Mary. So I'm like, well, you know, of course, a smaller ocean liner is going to go faster than Queen Mary. I'd really like to see an ocean liner that's larger than the Queen Mary go faster than the Queen Mary. Tangent says, oh, I like RMS Queen Mary and RMS Olympic, RMS Britannic 2. There's an RMS Britannic 2? And QE2. Emma says, are you most interested in Cunard or overall all ocean liners? Most of my favorites are Cunard ships, but I don't like all ocean liners. I'm very particular. I'm the same thing with trains. I don't like all trains. I just like very specific kinds of trains. To some people, that's a huge shocker. You know, like they're like, how can you only like some ocean liners or only like some trains? And I don't know. It's just how I am. But with ocean liners, generally speaking, and I mean generally speaking, I like ocean liners that are pre-World War II, but post 1890s usually. I think one of the oldest ocean liners that I like is probably the RMS Campania. Yeah, RMS Campania was 1890, I think. That's one of the oldest ocean liners I like. And generally speaking, in that period from 1890 to 1939, most of my favorite ocean liners from that time are British. I do like other ocean liners like the SS Rex, the Comte de Savoia, the SS France, SS Paris, that kind of thing. But most of my favorite ocean liners are between 1890 and 1939, and they're usually British. So, yeah. Mr. Olive says, yeah, Britannic from Olympic class was Britannic 2, because from an older Britannic. Oh, okay. Mysterious Wanderer says, where did your cat go? I don't have a cat. I never did. Maybe my sister's cat when I lived at my sister's apartment, but that wasn't my cat. I never had a cat. Tangen's leaving. See you later, Tangen. As Karthik says, if any modern ocean liner like Queen Mary 2, or also QE2, especially with a welded hull, were in place of Titanic during the collision with an iceberg, would say they survive or would see the same fate as Titanic? It probably would have survived. If it had a welded hull, I'd say it probably would have survived, because what failed on the Titanic wasn't that the hull plates cracked or broke open. It was that the rivets failed. And it wasn't because the rivets were of bad steel or anything. Rivets are generally made of a softer steel than the steel plates they hold together. And the reason why is because the rivets have to be soft enough that they can be pounded by machine or by hand. So they have to be soft. But yeah, when the iceberg collided with the Titanic, or when the Titanic collided with the iceberg, I mean to say, it popped the rivets, and a little seam opened up between the plates of the ship for approximately 200 to 250 feet. And that's what done in the Titanic. If her plates were welded, it probably would have survived the collision. Yeah. Zach Montrose says, what do you think the most historically significant ocean liner was? That's a tough one. The most historically significant ocean liner. in an effort not to be biased, I'm not going to say Queen Mary, but the Queen Mary really is way more historically significant than most people think, and that's why I've been making all these videos on my channel, is to show people that she wasn't just some troop ship. She did so much during the war, it is ridiculous. But in an effort not to be biased, I'm going to say the Aquitania. And the reason why is because the Aquitania served in 2 world wars, and she did a lot of work during both those wars. She was one of the last remnants of the late Edwardian age. I know King Edward died in 1911, I think, or maybe even late 1910. I know he died then, but technically the style of the Edwardian age didn't end until 5 years later. So the Aquitania was one of the last remnants of an Edwardian age liner, and it operated through 2 world wars, made it out through the Second World War, perfectly fine, and they retired it in 1950 because it was just old. So yeah, I'd say the Aquitania is probably one of the most historically significant liners. Yeah. That's my final answer on that one. Matthew says, was RMS Queen Elizabeth not under the same contract to never sail again like Queen Mary? So the Queen Elizabeth was... okay, so it was the same contract. But the contract specifically stipulates that the 2 ships could not sail as passenger liners ever again. And so that was the deal. That's why the Queen Mary can never sail again. What else would you use her for if not being a passenger service? Well, the people who were refurbishing the Queen Elizabeth were going to turn her into a university. So she wouldn't have necessarily been a passenger liner. It wouldn't have been for crossings and things like that. It would have been for education. So yeah, she would have sailed to places for education purposes, but not as a luxury passenger liner. So there was the difference, and that's what allowed them to get around it. The Queen Mary, if she was turned into a floating university like that, then yeah, she could get around that stipulation. But nobody's going to do that with the Queen Mary. She's too old. She wouldn't be very useful as a university anymore. So yeah. So that's why the Queen Mary will never sail again. But that's why the Queen Elizabeth was allowed to sail again. The funny thing about the Queen Elizabeth was, when Queen Mary came to Long Beach, they removed all of her propulsion system, everything like that, boilers, everything, to make way for the museum that they were going to build. Queen Mary, too, she got around that. She kept all her boilers and her propulsion, and she was able to sail from Florida to Hong Kong by herself, because they kept everything on there. That's one of the things where I'm like, geez, she was lucky in that sense, Anchor Hardware says, when did the SS United States retire? I don't know. Wasn't it like 1970? I don't know for certain. Let's see. S. Karthik says, is there any shipwreck which you would like to salvage? I want Britannic to be salvaged, but she is a war grave, so it can't be. Is there any shipwreck I would like to be salvaged? I mean, not a full salvaging. Not like bring the whole thing up, but I mean, there are aspects that I think would be interesting if we brought up parts of Lusitania, parts of Britannic, parts of Oceanic, 1899. There's things like that I think could be salvaged from, but I would never say to raise a whole ship. I don't think any ship is worth the money to bring it all back up to the surface, Even Titanic, I'm like, I don't know. Not the whole ship. That would be weird. But, you know, I am hoping one day somebody with all the technology, maybe James Cameron, you know, in 20 years from now, I'm hoping somebody will bring up one of Titanic's reciprocating engines. That's a huge ordeal because it's incredibly heavy. But yeah, I am kind of like, it would be nice to save one of those reciprocating engines at least, so we can marvel at its size, you know, and its power. I mean, imagine it. The engine was 3 stories tall. It was huge, you know, and there's nothing like that anymore on ships. You know, the closest thing to it, there's some reciprocating engines on other ships, but they're not the same size, you know. The professor asks, is the Seawise University, former Queen Elizabeth, really going to be a floating university, or is it just the name? No, it really was going to be a floating university. I forget his name, but I always forget the guy's name, but he was a Chinese businessman who his operations operated out of New York, but he had a business where he built floating universities out of old ocean liners, and the Queen Elizabeth was one of them. So she really was being converted to a university, and she would have sailed to different places for part of her research and her curriculum. So that was kind of the plan. Luke says, why did Cunard drop White Starline from their name? Well, I think it was to simplify. Honestly, that's the best answer. Is because it was a simplification. Also, it was a way to distance the company from its past. You know, when all these companies, all these ocean liner companies emerged from World War II, the idea of these fancy palaces on the sea was not interesting to people. They wanted to see modern fancy, but not palatial fancy. So, you know, to distance the Cunard company from its old-fashioned fire and brimstone ways, they simplified the name to just Cunard, to how it used to be. But they kept their little side thing where they say, we provide White Star service. To this day, they still say that. They say, we provide White Star service. So that's their last remnants of using the White Starline name, because White Star is now synonymous with luxury. Let me add, though, that doesn't mean White Starline was the most luxurious ocean liner company. It wasn't. It was among the most luxurious, but it wasn't the most luxurious ocean liner company back then. That's just something people think because of the various movies and TV shows about Titanic. But yes, so Cunard still says we provide White Star service. But yeah, as Karthik is right, by 1949, Cunard had recovered enough revenue to buy it. So yeah, Cunard did fully absorb White Starline by 1949. So S. Karthik is right about that. And they still, to this day, Cunard still owns the rights to that name, to the White Starline name, and the logo. So you can't just go out there and start producing White Starline stuff and start selling it, because it could eventually lead to a potential issue. That being said, there are people right now that are selling White Starline stuff that they make, and so far they haven't had any issues, but I wouldn't be surprised if they eventually did. Tyler Frederick says September 11th, 1969. I'm guessing that was the day that the SS United States retired. It's always on September 11th. There's always something about September 11th. Oh yeah, I see Mark Cooper. Okay. Mr. Dude says, interesting how White Starline was forced to merge with Cunard. Ah, it's the other way around, Mr. Dude. White Starline was not forced to merge with Cunard. White Starline originally asked to merge with Cunard. It was Cunard that was forced to merge with White Starline. You see, one of the executives of the White Starline company, prior, or I would say during the Great Depression, approached the Cunard officials and said, can you buy us out? Our company is failing and we want to keep it going, but we don't want to completely dissolve. And Cunard was like, we don't need you. We don't want you. We don't want to buy your company. You don't have any modern ships, which was true. They didn't really have any modern ships. There was, they were constructing the giant Britannic thing but there was nothing else. And they were in very bad, a very bad position. So Cunard was told by the government, hey, if you want to bail out to build the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth, then you need to merge with White Starline. Ironically, the person in government who told Cunard that they had to merge with White Starline if they wanted their subsidy was the same guy who a couple of years earlier asked Cunard to buy out White Starline. He was a White Starline executive. So I believe like chairman or something like that. So the chairman eventually went to work for the government, and when Cunard approached the government for the subsidy, he said merge with White Starline. So eventually it worked out. That's how it happened. But yeah, Cunard did not want to buy White Starline. How Cunard reacted when the SS United States take the blue ribbon. Cunard was very, what's the word? Professional about it, I guess. They just said, good on you, great job, United States line, for taking the blue ribbon. And the United States line was very nice about it, too. They didn't rub it in their face. Like, you'd think, I'm an American, so I know how Americans are. When we win at something, we rub it in people's faces. We're like, ha ha, But the United States line did not rub it in their face. In fact, the captain of the SS United States, he said in a statement afterwards that that he was a little bit saddened. I'm paraphrasing, but a little bit saddened to take the ribbon from such a gallant and lovely lady as the Queen Mary. So he was very, they were very respectable about it, both sides. And and the Queen Mary, in fact, when the SS United States had its maiden voyage, the captain of the Queen Mary, he knew the Queen Mary could not beat the speed of the SS United States. So when SS United States passed the Queen Mary, he blew the whistles of the Queen Mary to signal, like a little nod, like, we see you, good luck, So, so yeah, and he even went over the loudspeaker to tell the Queen Mary passengers, the SS United States is passing us to our starboard, and so everybody went out to look and stuff like that. So it was a very respectable thing. There was no, there was no ha-ha face rubbing kind of thing. It was just, respectable. But that being said, the Queen Mary then worked harder than ever to go at faster speeds. So the Queen Mary, it is said, during those years, broke her own previous speed records. Because what happened was, Cunard knew that the Queen Mary couldn't beat the SS United States. But they didn't want people to think that the Queen Mary was no longer fast. So she did still go really, really fast. I heard that the Queen Mary in those years, at one point, reached about 33 knots, which is faster than her previous recorded speed. So she did reach closer to 33 knots at one point. So she broke her own previous speed records to prove that she's still a fast lady. But, but yeah, she couldn't compete with the SS United States. That being said, just because the SS United States was going 38 knots does not mean that she did that on every voyage. SS United States, after winning the ribbon, slowed down to the usual speed of 29 knots, which was average for Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth. So the three ships, they went the same speed in the end, you know. As Karthik says, yeah, a whole ship would be impractical. Would you go to a Titanic expedition for a whole day inside a submersible? As it would not... Yeah, I would not do it, no. First of all, I kind of have a fear of the ocean. Second of all, I have a deep fear of going down into the ocean. So definitely not. I like my feet on solid ground. Mr. Dude says, what are the sandwiches? The sandwiches are traditional egg sandwiches, or as traditional as I can get, actually. A little bit of butter, a little bit of mayonnaise, some dill, a little bit of garlic powder, and some salt for seasoning. And then, yeah, mix it with some hard-boiled egg and put it in a sandwich. So, like I always tell people, the traditional way to do it is not to use dill, but to use watercress, but I don't have watercress. Let's see. Matthew Mahoney says, how much longer could the Queen Mary have sailed after 1967 if not for planes? Well, there are several aspects to the reason why the Queen Mary retired. It wasn't necessarily just because of planes. The fuel was really expensive. The Queen Mary consumed a lot of fuel. And the older she got, the less efficient she was. So, that being said, generally speaking, the ocean liners were designed to have 40 years at sea before they needed some really major investments, like new engines and stuff, that kind of thing. So technically they were designed for 40 years at sea without major investment. So technically the Queen Mary could have lasted till, 1936 to 1976. 1976 would have been the Queen Mary's, last time at sea, and then Queen Elizabeth would have lasted until 1980. Again, that's all very subjective. There is a lot of information, a lot of different things that probably would have stopped them from reaching 1976 and 1980, but at its most basic form, they could have technically still been on the ocean till 1976 and 1980 respectively. So, can you imagine that? Disco era, and, these gallant and old-fashioned ladies on the ocean while, while the Clash was out there doing shows. So, that would have been really weird. But Mark Cooper says, I love the White Star Service badges all the crew wear aboard Cunard vessels to this day. It's a fitting tribute to the legacy of White Star. Yeah, I agree. James says, I believe the Australian Clive Palmer has made a Blue Star Line company and building a replica of the Titanic. I'm not sure how that's going, though. It was canceled last year from what I heard. But, Clive Palmer, he's had this Titanic 2 idea since I was a teenager, and he's never built it. And nobody believed he could build it, It would never have made money. The revenue would not have been enough, to pay back its expenses. So from what I heard, it was canceled last year. But frankly, it's been kind of a running joke because he's, it's been under production for 15 years or something like that. Maybe a little bit less than 15 years, but it's been in the works for close to 15 years. And it's never even had its keel laid. No one's ever actually designed the decks. Like, none of that's been done. The only thing that we've ever seen come out of that project was concept art. So, yeah, it was never going to happen. Anchor says he has to go. Alright, see you later, Anchor. Which sister was more successful, Queen Mary or Queen Elizabeth? I also love your channel. Keep going. Thank you so much. Both were equally successful, but it depends on how you measure success. So Queen Elizabeth was more fuel efficient, even though she was larger than the Queen Mary. So she was more fuel efficient, so you could say that she had better profit margins. And that's why Queen Elizabeth lasted, until 1969. Till 1968, was because Queen Elizabeth was more fuel efficient, so she lasted a bit longer at sea. But Queen Mary was more popular because she had an amazing reputation, and she was beautiful. Queen Elizabeth was a beautiful ship, but there was something about, the Queen Mary that was more magical. And there was former crew of the Queen Mary who said that, we worked on Queen Elizabeth, and you could definitely tell that the Mary was easier to run. The Queen Mary had everything down to a T. Everything was easy to understand, easy to operate. But Queen Elizabeth had all these issues, and it was just, it made it more of a headache. Not to say that the Queen Elizabeth was not easy to run. I'm just saying that the crew was saying that Queen Elizabeth was obviously the younger sister for those very reasons. And Queen Mary was just easy to understand, easy to operate. But as to which one was more successful, it's hard to say. Queen Mary was more popular, but Queen Elizabeth earned more money. So it's weird that way. Serious Wanderer says, where were you on September 11th? Which one? Mark Cooper says, you are right. Between U.S. lines and Cunard, the handover of the blue ribbon was very gentlemanly and respectful. I did not understand there was any animosity. Cunard has always been known for class. Yeah, Cunard has been known for class, and surprisingly, the United States lines, again, they didn't overdo it. They were very respectful about it. And a lot of people would probably wonder why, but the truth is that even though the United States line was a competing line service, every ocean line had a respect for the Queen Mary. The Queen Mary wasn't just some ocean liner. Everybody knew back then the reputation of the ship. She was the best at one point. And her duty in World War II is to be, commended. And so everybody around the world knew the Queen Mary. So when SS United States passed her, on at sea, there was no haha, we're faster. It was just more like, we're sorry to have been faster, but we're happy that we were. And so that's kind of how it was, RMS Queen Mary says, did you read my other comment? I don't know. Let me see. Why did White Starline spend a lot of money on the RMMV Oceanic and they never built it? Well, they spent a lot of money because they wanted to compete with, with other ships at the time. And the reason why they never built it was because they ran out of money. That's why. Mr. Dude says, how do you feel about the modern cruise lines like Caribbean and others like it? I'm not really into cruise ships. You know, I really like ocean liners, and I'm all about history, not about modern stuff. So, you know, that's part of the reason why I'm not into modern trains or modern ocean liners, or I'm not ocean liners, cruise ships. Is it's just I like history. You know, that's who I am. So, um, United States never used all her boiler power. It would have been too expensive and inefficient, and any shipping line. Wait, for any shipping line. SSUS was under government subsidy for her entire life. She was never herself profitable. Wow. Yeah, I didn't know that, but it makes sense though. Linda says, "Good afternoon, Alex. Happy tea time. Happy tea time to you too. I was finishing chores and watching, listening. Now I can finally sit down with a cup of tea." That's good. Let's see. Mark Cooper says, "Of interest, Sir William Francis Gibbs greeted his baby, SSUS, every time she docked at New York City and called her every day she was at sea." Oh, wow. That's interesting. Yeah, I know that architect was, yeah, he really loved that ship. Tyler Frederick says, "Alex, you just said you have a deeper fear of going down into the ocean. Would you compare sinking into the ocean as sinking into quicksand?" No, because in real life, quicksand is easy to get out of. I mean, not easy, but you can get out of it. There's people who teach other people how to get out of quicksand and stuff like that. Most quicksand is actually at the beach and not really in jungles or anything like that, like what is often portrayed. But you can get out of quicksand. But if you're sinking under the ocean, it may not be so easy. But as Karthik says, "What is the greatest and most perfect ocean liner of all time in terms of services?" In terms of services? Boy, that's a hard one, because there's... Gosh, it really depends. I mean, you know, do you value your time aboard the ocean liner more than you value getting to your destination quickly? You know? Because some ocean line services were so fancy, but didn't necessarily have the fastest speed. You know? I mean... And it also depends on what you like about the service. You know, one could argue that Normandy was the best, because she was the most luxurious and, you know, and she had the best service. But I mean, when you really look at it, what is the best? It's subjective, you know. I wouldn't have liked my service on the Normandy, you know. I wouldn't have liked it at all. I wouldn't have even gone back, you know. So, I don't know. I guess most people would tell you Normandy, but I don't, it's not the kind of service I'd be looking for, so I wouldn't say that, but I don't know, I guess maybe the Queen Elizabeth, I guess. Queen Elizabeth was newer. While I prefer Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth, on the other hand, she was just a little bit newer. You know, things were a bit more polished and pristine and clean, and yeah, I guess that would be it. Mysterious Wanderer says, "Are you following the Artemis 1 launch?" I don't even know what that is. Beluga Brody says, "Hey Alex, what if the island of Sodor from the Railway series Thomas and Friends was real? Will you visit the engines? Please make a video." I don't know. I never watched Thomas and Friends. It wasn't part of my childhood. I don't even know anything about Thomas and Friends. I know Thomas is a blue engine. That's about it. That's it. I know nothing else. The professor says, to this day, the United States remains the last blue ribbon ship record holder. Yes, she does. Linda says, I searched for some YouTube videos of the Queen Mary too, as I just discovered her last with your chat. She looks like so much fun, but I do have many fancy clothes. But I don't have many fancy clothes. Yeah. Well, the good news is that, you know, there's only like a few times in your whole voyage where you'll need to wear fancy clothes. Like you'll only need it for I think 2 nights of your voyage. But the rest of your voyage you could wear nice casual clothing. Not like, you know, short shorts and flip-flops, but I mean, you know, nice casual clothing. But yeah, I think only 2 nights of the week you have to dress, or maybe even 3 nights of the week you have to dress fancy. I know when I eventually take the transatlantic crossing, I'll need to get like a tuxedo or something, maybe even rent it, I don't know, but yeah, I'll definitely need a tuxedo for those days. Boy. Matthew Mahoney says, how much longer could Queen Elizabeth have sailed as a university? It's hard to say because if you go back to my other video where I talk about how long ocean liners last, the answer is as long as you put in the effort to restore and repair, it'll keep lasting. So, you know, the Queen Elizabeth, you know, as long as they kept putting in the work, she could keep floating and keep sailing. So there's really no telling how long she could have lasted. It's really, yeah, it's not possible for me to answer that. Mr. Olive says, did the Titan have the same fate as Titanic? I don't know what the Titan is. Luke says, what was the latest ship to be owned by White Star Line? The Britannic and No. Yeah, Britannic and Georgic, I think. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Wow, we're almost coming up on 2 hours. Oh, thank you, Tyler. Thank you for the information from my last comment. This is not only a thank you, but for your voyage on the Queen Mary, and have a cup of coffee on me. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I would. Oh, I'm so excited to take that voyage. In terms of war, between Aquitania, Queen Mary, and Queen Elizabeth, who helped more? Oh boy. That's similar to that one last question. I don't know if I have enough information to answer that question accurately, but I think Queen Mary. I don't know. I think Queen Mary, you know, she transported 810,000 troops to war. You know, she was, you know, they planned the storming of Normandy on the Queen Mary, as well as tested the Mulberry Harbor models on the Queen Mary. The Queen Mary helped with the battle at El Alamein, and she was credited by Winston Churchill, for shortening the war by a year. And Queen Elizabeth was also part of that, but still. And the Queen Mary was the head ship that was in Operation Bolero. So I think I would have to say Queen Mary. Chris Taft says it looks like they are doing a nice job preserving the QE2. Yeah, I think they are too. I wouldn't say preserving. Technically, when she got to Dubai and they were turning her into a hotel, they changed so much of her. So that's not preservation. That's just refurbishment. That's redoing stuff. So I wouldn't say they preserved her. They've just honestly, a lot of her old look is no longer there. They just changed her completely. So Luke says, where is QE2 now? She is in Dubai. She's as a floating hotel in Dubai. Very successful hotel. Yeah, Queen Mary has a record of transporting more people. And the other thing, too, is the Queen Mary is literally the reason why they won the first battle at El Alamein. Literally the reason. The Rommel's forces had cornered the British 8th Army at the beaches. They almost lost the battle. And then Queen Mary came in with 10,000 American troops and dropped them all off, and they overwhelmed Rommel's forces, and they won the battle. Aquitania, I don't think, off the top of my head, Aquitania has anything like that in her record. So, the Queen Mary actually won a battle because of that. Technically it was the men who fought and won the battle, but still, the men wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for the Queen Mary. So that's why I think the Queen Mary did more. That's a huge thing to win a battle. That's huge. But yeah, the other thing too was that just the sheer amount of people she transported in complete safety and speed. It's amazing. It's amazing Aquitania wasn't torpedoed throughout World War II, because she wasn't as fast as, Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth. But boy, she avoided getting torpedoed. Mark Cooper says, if you want to see the original QE in a movie, the James Bond film Man with the Golden Gun shows wonderful footage of her burned out in Hong Kong Harbor. Very sad, of course. Yeah, I've seen that. Matthew Mahoney says, why is SS United States so expensive to preserve? Well, because she's got nothing inside of her. There's nothing left. So everything would have to be all brand new. But the other thing, too, is that she doesn't, unlike the Queen Mary, she doesn't sit on her own land. So Queen Mary, Queen Mary comes hand in hand with the land that surrounds her. So, so you don't have to pay for port fees and stuff. But with the SS United States, you would. Anybody who acquires the SS United States would have to pay for where she's at. Those port fees could be hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. That's a lot of money for port fees. And so that's part of the reason. So not only would you have to spend the approximately $800 million to construct a whole new floating hotel inside the SS United States, but then you have to figure out where you're going to put her. A place that's cheap enough where she'll make a profit without having to spend all that extra money, because she'd have all the same issues. She would need approximately $5 million a year in maintenance. That's not to say that she's broken when they build a brand new hotel out of her, but that's just how much ships of her size would cost. The Queen Mary, besides all of her maintenance work that needs to be done, would still need $5 million a year for maintenance. That's just how it is. So I estimate that the SS United States would need the same. Repainting, plumbing work, electrical work that gets faulty, light bulb replacement, kitchen equipment that needs replacing, all that stuff. Paying maintenance people to do the maintenance, all that kind of stuff. So I imagine that the SS United States would need also just about $5 million a year. So you're paying $5 million a year in annual maintenance and other costs, and then the port fees on top of that. Again, it could be $100,000, could be $200,000, could be $500,000 a month in port fees, and that really adds up throughout the whole year. So, it's not as profitable as people think it is. People, they assume, they're like, oh well, once you build her into a floating hotel, then she'll make money. It's like, yeah, but then where are you gonna put her that is cheap enough? If you want her to be successful, you got to put her in places like New York City. But the port fees would kill you. They're so expensive. But if you put her somewhere cheap, no one's going to want to go there. So it's a double-edged sword, and that's exactly why no one has refurbished the SS United States, is because it's a double-edged sword. You could spend all that money to build a beautiful floating hotel, but then you'll get killed with all the annual fees, Mr. Olive says, one more question before I go. Okay. S. Karthik says, I meant which is all around needed to be fastest or most luxurious, but passengers were happy to sail on it, and it ticked all the check boxes which a perfect ocean liner has. Ooh. None of them ever did, though. That's the thing. I guess if I had to choose which one came close to ticking all those boxes, I guess the one that would come close to ticking all those boxes would be the Queen Mary. She was very, very fast. Generally speaking, she had great luxury service for her time. She was profitable for, before the airline age. Yeah, I guess it would be the Queen Mary. Let's see. Where is Mr. Olives' question? RMS Queen Mary asked, did you know the Titanic had a list to port when she sank? Yeah, I mentioned it in my video about whether the Queen Mary would have sank if she was struck by Titanic's iceberg. So I mentioned it there. What did Cunard think when they knew that the Titanic sank? I mean, they probably thought, how horrible, Cunard was very helpful. The Carpathia came to help the ship, and and then Mauretania and Lusitania offered to help. I don't think they needed it, though. They didn't need the help from Mauretania and Lusitania. So, I mean, Cunard was helpful, but, nobody fought or anything like that. Luke Michael says, why did Olympic get scrapped? And is there a chance that she could have became a hotel or a museum? Olympic got scrapped because she reached a point where her age and her maintenance was becoming more expensive than the amount of money she was earning, and then also, of course, because she was outdated. Her style and design was no longer something people wanted in the 1930s. She was seen as this very old, elderly ship that, the other ships had much better accommodations. Most of the rooms on Olympic didn't even have their own bathrooms. but other ships at that time did. And that was a big thing. Like, people wanted their own bathrooms. So there was a lot of reasons. And again, they could have kept her in operation if they made significant investments in the ship, as any ship can. But you have to wonder, is it worth it? Is it really worth it? And to them, building an all-new ocean liner was more worth it than refurbishing the Olympic. So that's why. Mr. Olives asks, what if Britannic was owned by Cunard? It probably would have faced the same fate as Olympic. I mean, Cunard owned Olympic for a year. They kept her in operation for a year. And then it just got old and scrapped her. And Britannic would have been the same. Britannic was from the same era. Same Edwardian style, same issues, you know. Old, outdated, expensive to operate. So she would have faced the same fate. Mark Hooper says, I enjoyed your chat about the Queen's contribution to the war effort. It cannot be underestimated how this work shortened the war through mass troop transport. The entire free world must be grateful. Oh, yeah. Oh, dude. I mean, the both Cunard Queens, they did so much for, you know, the World War II. It's no understatement, you know, that Winston Churchill was right. You know, those two ships helped shorten the war by a year. You know, that doesn't, to modern people, that doesn't sound like such a big deal. It's like, oh, so they shortened the war. It's like, well, if you can imagine how many people were dying every day in that war, and to save a whole year's worth of death and destruction. And you can credit all of that to two ships, simply because they transported that many people in safety while they were being hunted down for 6 years by enemy submarines, facing rogue waves and facing, you know, the threat of being bombed when they reached their ports, facing, you know, striking underwater mines and things like that. You know, like, it is miraculous what they did for this world. And no one cares. It's, you know, it's like, you know, people go to the Queen Mary and they go there and they learn about all this history, and all they can think of is, well, where's the ghosts? It's just sad. It's like, it's, you know, like, it's sad. Like, I'm not mad at those people for just looking for ghosts. I'm not mad at them. So I don't want people who love ghosts and love the Queen Mary's ghost to be here and think I'm going to judge them. I don't judge you, but at least those who are watching my channel are learning history. At least. But but it was really sad when I last went to the Queen Mary. I mean, I've been to the Queen Mary a few times in my life, and each time I remember people always asking about ghosts. It's like people didn't care about the history. They were like, oh, who cares? I'm alive, so that doesn't matter to me. It's just like, it's astounding. It's like most people in this world probably owe their lives to some extent to the Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth. You know, a lot of us wouldn't be alive today if that war was never won, or, you know, stuff like that. You know, the world would have been probably a much worse place if things did not go the way that they did. And so, you know, it's just amazing that people go there and they learn all this history, and it just goes in one ear and out the other, and all they can think of is, show me Casper, you know? It's just like, it's like, what? How could you do that? Let's see. Matthew Mahoney says, I think the plan is to move the United States to New York. I'm sure that's the plan when it's eventually, you know, refurbished, but I don't imagine that they would do that right now while it's not being refurbished, because New York, again, is way more expensive. Like, there's a reason why she's in Philadelphia, because there are some places there that have, you know, cheaper port fees. You know, I think right now her port fees are $100,000 a month, I think. Yeah, something like that. But New York, just triple that. It'll be immediately, just triple that. They don't have the money for that. I don't think it'll happen. RMS Queen Mary asks, what was Cunard first name? Samuel. Samuel Cunard was his name. Many people say, oh, it's Cunard. I'm like, it's not Cunard. It's Cunard. That was his name, you know. Even the Cunard company, they call themselves Cunard. But it's not Cunard, it's not Cunard, it's not, I don't know, whatever else you want to call it. It's Cunard. Just a little extra for you. Why did the Queen Mary get the opportunity to be preserved? Like popularity? Because Olympic and Aquitania were also popular. Well, it's a really complex question, but it's an important question, so I'm glad you asked. Olympic and Aquitania and Mauretania were really popular ships for their time. And believe it or not, there was people who wanted to save Olympic. It's just that, it's like I said during one of my other live streams. I don't think you were there for it, so I'll say it again. But it's like if I take this kettle, and to me it's just some, $30 kettle. It's not much. It's, but it is nice. It's one of the higher end kettles. Well, it's almost $40, but still, it's one of the higher end kettles. So it's nice. It's luxurious, and it does its job very well. But if it broke today, if I got it repaired, it could be useful. But would I really spend the money to get it repaired when I could easily buy another one for nearly the same cost? And why would I keep it, So that's kind of the dilemma here is to me, this kettle is, once it's broken, it's worthless. It's probably worth being put in the trash. But who's to say that 80 years from now, this kettle could be considered a very valuable antique? So that was the problem that ships like Olympic, Aquitania, Mauretania faced, was that they weren't seen necessarily as vintage, antique ships that are worth preserving. They were seen as outdated old vessels that, that can't compete. And every day, new ocean liners were being constructed. And so it's like, when you have new ocean liners being constructed all the time, the older ones don't seem so valuable. It wasn't until after ocean liners began to stop being produced in the 1960s, when new ocean liners just weren't being produced all the time, that's when people started to realize these things are going away, and that automatically increases the percepted value of those things. So the reason why Olympic, Aquitania, Mauretania didn't survive is because, generally speaking, it just wasn't believed that they just held that much value. Yes, they were very popular for their time, but the Queen Mary actually, and people will try to say this is not true, but it is true. When the Queen Mary retired, she was the most famous passenger ship ever. Even more famous than Titanic, believe it or not. When Queen Mary retired, she was the most famous passenger ship ever. And that's part of the reason why everybody wanted to save her. But the other part of the reason was because the only other ocean liner that was really being built at the time was the QE2. And so people knew ocean liners are going out the door, Queen Mary is one of the last ones, especially one of the last ones from before World War II. So her value was automatically believed to be much, much higher. People valued the ship way more. And so that's why the Queen Mary lasted. It wasn't just like, who do we pick? It's more like, why did we pick? And they picked because, she was valuable even then. At the time, she was the most famous ocean liner in the world, and she was one of the last ones from the golden age of ocean liners. So they everybody chose to preserve her and Queen Elizabeth, and even SS United States was kept from the scrapping yard. S. Karthik says, are you having interest in battleships? Which one is your favorite? I don't have interest in battleships. I am not a battleship person. Zedric Place says, not to mention the airliners. Yeah. What time is it? So, 32 viewers, and it's 6:14. It is time for me to go, you guys. What I'm doing next is I'm doing a meeting with some friends. We're going to be talking about the teaser trailer that I'm going to be making for the Yarrow Project. It's going to be a really cool teaser trailer, and the videos especially. There's going to be a 20 to 25 minute long documentary about the Queen Mary, and then the second video is about the actual Yarrow Project and what it would have been, and then there will be a third video that is like a behind the scenes, like why didn't the Yarrow Project come to be, and where is it now? What will happen? That kind of thing. So, so those are the ideas for the 3 videos, and a teaser trailer is coming out in the next couple weeks, I would say. Next couple weeks, hopefully. So we're going to be talking about that next. My next tea time is going to be on Tuesday at 4 p.m. Let's see. Monday, tomorrow, is a video coming out about my interest in narrow gauge steam trains. And then, let's see, I'm thinking Wednesday I'm going to do a live stream where I can show you guys some secret places inside the Queen Mary that used to be something else. You know, some places that we've probably never seen before, that kind of stuff. And then Friday will be my video about the Benson Hotel and its amazing story. So there's lots of stuff coming up this week, and I hope you're as excited as I am about it. But anyway, thank you all so much, you guys, for watching, and I will see you all on Tuesday. Bye-bye.